Power on.
But we want to send you home now with an upbeat number, with a dance number, with a song that'll put a smile on your face and a nice warm feeling down here in the cockle. Everything is horrible, yeah. Really, really, really terrible. I'm really depressed. I'm really downtrodden. I'm downtrodden square. The whole world is doomed. Yeah, we're all gonna die. 25,672 people die every single minute.
Earth, 2019. Dominant species, human. Galactic potential rating, 0. Cultural affiliation, combination of government and global businesses, corporatism, legacy institution. Species still conservative, superstitious, and religious. Ecologically illiterate, largely unaware of cosmological foundation of love. Level of technological dependence is disturbingly higher than the galactic standard. Species distracted and behavior controlled by technology companies. System error. Advanced concepts detected beyond normal human levels. New galactic potential rating, over 9,000. Transmission type, podcast. Host, the man of tomorrow. Brian Sovryn. Source, Sovryn Tech.
Coming to you from a little USB flash drive that is running Tails right now, baby, because I fucking hate Windows 10. Holy hell. No, really, it's true. Both parts. Because, you know, I like to test this stuff on the ground. Like, really, can I get away with running just Tails OS, right? And actually, they're doing beta tests for Tails version 4, which that's going to be another big leap. Very, very excited for that, to see when that happens here. But anyway, I'll keep you posted on those sorts of things. Also, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Sovryn Tech, Sovryn Tech, and I generally will retweet from Tails. You can just follow Tails on Twitter, you know, alone if you wanted to, but I generally retweet whatever they put out there just because I really want to get people on board with this. You know, I could talk about it for a while, but I've been trying, like I said, ever since the Tor project brought on a new director, she was really arguing for, no, everybody needs to be using Tor and using it as like your daily driver web browser. And I thought that was I'll just say it, I know it's cliche, but really it's a bold vision. But I think it's a correct one and a right one. And I have been doing that for some time, trying to use it more as my daily driver for, you know, everything that I do. And certainly run into issues here and there, but I mean, it just goes to show all the problems, security issues, should I say, with the internet as we know it. But regardless of that, I give it a shot. But anyway, we're going to talk about some other stuff here in a second. But you know, I got to admit, when I use Tor, boy, do I get excited. I get so excited. Sometimes I want to break out. I want to break out some Blue Chew, and you know what I want to do. It might be time to hop in bed and see if, while the Tor browser might be hardened as a rock, see if the man of tomorrow can get hard as a rock, and if you need to, I want you to check out Blue Chew. Now, it has the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know it works. Blue Chew, it's like the color blue, but it's chew. It's the blue pill, BLU, chew, CHEW, because it's chewable. The first chewable, just go to bluechew.com. That's BLUchew.com. Go to bluechew.com and you are going to get your hookup. In fact, if you use the code TECH, like Sovryn Tech, if you use the code TECH, you'll get For only $5, you're just going to have to pay for the shipping. But for free, you're going to get your first order. You're going to get your first order for free, just $5 shipping. And again, there's no embarrassing doctor's visits, nothing like that. It all gets handled right with Blue Chew at bluechew.com. Again, that's BLUE, like the color blue, BLUE chew.com, like the chewable. And I mean, I got to tell you, this is the thing. Understand, Blue Chew, if things aren't getting, as hot and ready as they used to, guys, okay, or anyone with those parts, if things aren't getting hot and ready right away like they used to, Blue Chew's here. But also, maybe you just want to extend that performance. He said extend, right? Maybe you just want to extend that performance, baby. Okay. Blue Chew is where it's at. I know that's what I rock it for. So bluechew.com, and I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Now, let us get into let's get into the foreplay here as we take our Blue Chew, right? It's the foreplay is where we talk about all the little stories happening in the tech world. And we have got a few. And while speaking of hardening, now, granted, where I was just talking about how I've been trying, really experimenting with really using Tor. In fact, actually, really just been using Tails quite a bit for my daily driver. I know Tails isn't exactly made for that, but I wonder what's coming down the line. That's just me just spouting that out there, just curious. But certainly we know that the Tor browser itself is definitely something that's trying to become way more mainstream. Again, I fully support this. But now, something that I've recommended that people do, fuck Google, but while we're at it, okay, Google's Advanced Protection Program. Now, if you do have a Google account, and let's be open and honest, most of us do, for whatever varying reason, even if we don't like Google, even if we don't want to use Google's products because we're concerned about privacy and so on, or we're concerned about our security because privacy is an aspect of security. They're separate things. But to have real full-on security, I dare argue you have to have privacy and anonymity and things like this. And certainly Google are not fans of privacy and anonymity. But they are fans of security. And admittedly, they do a lot of things right. Even though there are elements of the company, and they are, central elements of the company that stand against, like I said, having 100% security, because that would include, again, privacy and anonymity. There's a lot of aspects of security where they are really ahead of the curve, especially when it comes to tech giants. One of the things that I really have applauded them for a while is actually their Advanced Protection Program, which is a service, and it's totally free. Totally free. And it makes sense that that this thing is totally free, because the more secure your account is, the less Google is on the hook for a security breach, right? So of course that they would offer this for free, because it does it right. Basically, the Advanced Protection Program, it's really only something, well, you don't have to use Chrome, because so what it does is it'll ask for like either a Bluetooth key, like their own Titan key that Google offers, or you can use a YubiKey, like the YubiKey 5, or you go down your list. I'm a big fan of YubiKey, or YubiKeys, and I keep them. I have mine at all times, baby, ready to go. But basically, it allows you to use a FIDO2 device, like a Titan key or a or a YubiKey, plug it into a USB port, or USB-C. They offer those as well. Or it could be Bluetooth again, or it could actually operate off of NFC, kind of like the YubiKey 5 does. And it will act as your your second factor authenticator, okay, for your username and password. And it will, now when you have the Google Advanced Protection Program turned on though, which again, I've been recommending people do forever, okay, when you have that turned on, basically, there are no alternatives. You either have to have that security key, or you're going to have to go through an appeals process that takes days, multiple days, to get access to your account again, even if, and that's an if Google will let you. Now, I agree with this, okay, because getting into your accounts should be really fucking hard. And yeah, there should be some risk around that. Okay, and again, everybody brings it up every goddamn time, and it drives me up the fucking wall when they say, well, what if I lose my YubiKey? Have more than one. In fact, the Google Advanced Protection Program requires you to have more than one, just because this very concept that you're afraid you're going to lose your keys. Now, I mean, what are you going to do if, like, you know, your car, you have the keys for your car. You have one spare key, maybe. You know, maybe you have two or something. What happens if you lose both of those? Well, I don't know. What do you do then? I mean, it's the same thing with the Google Advanced Protection Program. It just, and with YubiKeys and everything. Just have backups. We've been doing this for, you know, as far as keys, like physical objects that unlock things, like an actual, you know, lock key, right? Tumbler key, all right? Or, you know, a YubiKey, which is meant for the digital realm. We've been dealing with this kind of, I mean, the digital realm is more recent, but we've been dealing with the concept of keys and having spares for over a century, folks. Can you stop that whole argument that, oh, I don't want to do that because I might lose it? I think your chances are probably better that you're going to get amnesia and forget your fucking passwords or something. I mean, oh, stop. Anyway, so the Google Advanced Protection Program, which I think everybody should turn on, okay? And yes, it's going to require you to be a responsible person, a responsible human being that can keep track of their fucking shit, that can keep track of their, you know, of their keys and know where they are, okay? Not let the dog eat them or whatever. I don't know. Whatever your excuses are. Okay, turn that on and have it so you have to pop in your key every time. Now, if you have like an Android smartphone, you know, and it has NFC, or again, it can work with Bluetooth. And actually, YubiKeys come out with stuff that works with iPhones as well. But I'm not sure if the Advanced Protection Program works. I'm not certain if that works with iPhone. I've yet to ever look into that. Anyway, you know, it works just like it does on your desktop as it does on your smartphone. And it will lock down your account to where, you know, again, you're required to have that key. Now, interestingly, the Google Advanced Protection Program, it not only does that, but it also, I mean, that's mainly what it does, is where it will require that authenticator of the security key. And this is helpful for like phishing attacks with emails, all that. Okay. But what it also does now is across platforms. So this is, you know, the Google Advanced Protection Program. If you're in Google's ecosystem, I mean, that's, again, even more, if you're really knee deep in it, it's even more reason to have it. But admittedly, it's a great option for like Chromebooks as well, right? But anywhere where you're running Chrome, it will now block what it considers to be risky downloads. Okay. Now Google's very vague as far as what these risky downloads are. They're not saying, is it just exe files on Windows? Is it zip files? What are they? But to automate more security, okay, when you're in the Advanced Protection Program, I think is only a good thing. Okay. I mean, it really, really is. This is something, you know, it kills me. Because basically Google makes, and I mean, the Advanced Protection Program is basically sold to, or, you know, the idea is that it's for political dissidents, activists, and journalists to protect their shit. Makes a lot of sense. Those are certainly high profile individuals that need their stuff secured. I'm not going to argue any way against that. Okay. But I really think that it's actually something everybody should be using. Like Google is really showing this is how security gets done. You know, why wouldn't you? I mean, go up to anybody and say, you know, and ask them, do you want your stuff more secure or less? And probably they're going to say more. You know, and so they're really showing the standard of what security should be. So everybody should have a, you know, like a physical second factor key or a security device of some kind, whatever that ends up looking like. I mean, you can also, with an Android phone, you can use that as your second factor as well. Kind of the same concept as, say, a Bluetooth FIDO device, right? It would be the same idea. But I mean, it's interesting that Google offers all of these options for how to really secure your stuff. Just like with Google Fi. When you use Google Fi, what's one of the things they recommend? To turn on Google's VPN that works across mobile and Wi-Fi connections. Basically, Google's saying everybody should have a YubiKey. Everybody should have their VPN on at all times. I mean, that's really what Google's saying. You know, whether or not everybody's jumping on board with this stuff or not, that's what they're doing. You know, that's what they're saying. Now, I understand. I mean, there's some of us who we know exactly what we're doing. And when we go to download a file, you know, like an exe file, even say if you're using Windows, or a zip file or whatever, we know that those come with risks, and generally we have, you know, actions or like plans of, we have an action plan of how we're going to handle those kind of files. Even if we think we got it from a trusted source, we're usually very careful about this stuff, aren't we? So, and I don't like that Chrome like wants to have that much control over, and because they've been doing this for a while, where they warn about a zip file or an exe file. In fact, I remember when I was selling, it was my first game, Hyperchronius, that came out. Boy, has that been 4 years? That's fucking amazing. Anyway, my first game, Hyperchronius, when that came out, the zip file that you could get, which came from AWS, Chrome was flagging it as like malicious. Now, it was a zip file because it was portable. Okay, meaning that you could play the game, you didn't have to like really install it. You could just open up the zip folder and you could play it anywhere. But, that's kind of the thing, is that Google is trying to rescue people from their own lackadaisicalness, or, their own laziness, or maybe their stupidity. They're really trying to rescue people from that. But, and I get it that that's annoying. Like, I don't want them to do that, and I think there's flags that you can turn off in Chrome. And if you're knowledgeable enough how you want to handle these kind of security risks, you're probably knowledgeable enough to want to turn off those flags. I understand that. At the same time, I don't think that this is a bad feature. Okay, because they are trying to make the security a little more, I don't want to say mindless, but more automated. That's what I really mean by that. They're making it more automated, and I'm intrigued to see what it comes up with. I mean, this is kind of an experiment, and I'm curious what would happen. I mean, it's easy enough to actually do a twofold solution where if you're going to go do some, shall we say, risky business, use Tor for that, right? Because then you have the security features that you set up and you are more what you wanted and you have more direct control over, and you do with the Tor browser. And then for, everything else, if you're somebody who really, again, is really stuck in Google's ecosystem, use the Google Protection Program, right? Or, the Advanced Protection Program, which, even if you're not knee deep in Google's ecosystem, you really should have this turned on. You really should be getting used to using a YubiKey. In fact, I just saw the announcement this morning where Google is talking about taking however many millions and millions of accounts, making them passwordless. Of course, they're going to more biometrics. I don't agree with that direction, but I totally agree with the direction of having, be it, again, any FIDO-based device, or, well, actually, Squirrel, I don't even think I've talked about this because our schedule's been a little flunky, or odd lately with Sovryn Tech, but Squirrel, SQRL, by Steve Gibson of the Security Now podcast, which is his passwordless authentication process, login process. That's live. Like that exists. That's out there. There's a WordPress plugin for it and everything. I mean, it's really, really exciting. In fact, I want to try, no guarantees, but I'm going to see if I could actually get Steve Gibson interviewed on the show and have him talk about it. I know they're going to be doing a big walkthrough, of it, demo on Twit, which is where the Security Now podcast resides. And I'll be curious to see that, but I'd love to have him on, really to talk about it more, even though I've talked about Squirrel ever since he first announced it, which that's been years in the making, but the time is right because everybody's getting away. Even the tech giants are getting away from passwords. Google is. Apple certainly has been for a while. Microsoft is as well. Just go down the list. They know it's a problem. They want to get away from it. And, well, there it is. So anyway, Google's passwordless future, they're really starting more on that because even with the Advanced Protection Program, you still have a password. But their passwordless future is starting off with Android, which there might be an interesting conversation to have around that, but I'm going to save that for another episode. So moving on from there, but I did think that was interesting, and I'm glad, if anything, I'm just glad that there is a new development in the Advanced Protection Program, because I don't want them to just let this go by the wayside. Because I think that for a lot of people, again, who have to be, for whatever reason, they have a Gmail account of some kind, or, a G Suite account, right? As far as with enterprise and the enterprise space and all this, they need to, this kind of feature needs to exist for them if they find themselves in those environments. So I'm glad it's out there, and I'm glad it's still getting actively developed and worked on, and new features are getting put in. At least that. I'm very glad for that. So moving on. Speaking of Android, how about an Android alternative? I read about this recently. I think it just got announced in June of 2019. Looked very, very interesting, and that is Postmarket OS. And this is basically Linux, okay, this is basically Linux on a smartphone. But here's the rub. It's not just for any smartphone. Post-market, and you can kind of, you can sense it in the name, meaning that it's an aftermarket operating system, right? Like post-market. It would have been, maybe aftermarket OS was already taken. I don't know. But post-market OS, it's a good name. And the idea is to make all of these, and I mean, let's, in another case, let's be honest. All of the smartphones that most people consider to be outdated, and to some degree, there's logic to that, right? Because, like say with Android, only Android 9 and up solves some very serious security flaws, and serious security exploits that we know about. Okay, and I say all the time on the show, that's why you get like an Android 1 phone, you want to be getting the latest operating system updates. Getting the latest security updates is great too, but getting the latest operating system updates is also very important. So I understand why people want to get a new phone. Most people don't do it for that reason though. I do that, but I'd be happy if my Moto X4 is the last phone that I ever buy. I'd be so happy about that. But most people, really, they just get a new phone because they think, ooh, whiz, bang, new features. Fuck. What did Samsung announce this week? 108 megapixel camera? You're going to have to explain that one to me. Like, seriously? The pictures just weren't fucking good enough? Come on. Tell me. Email me about this. bbs@sovryntech.com. You're going to tell me the pictures on the Galaxy. Go back to the Galaxy S6. Tell me those pictures. What did that have? A 30 megapixel camera or something? Are you going to tell me those pictures were so shitty that, goddamn it, we had to, quadruple practically the amount of megapixels on that camera? Sell me on this. Tell me how that makes any fucking sense. It doesn't, and you know it. So anyway, something that I've said for a while. In fact, this is when we were reviewing, I think it was the Android Go phone, which was the Nokia 2 at the time. I think it was the 2018 or 2017 version. There's a new Nokia 2 out there that actually looks like a pretty nice phone. I reviewed it on a Zomia 1 underground Q&A recently. But, so, I've mentioned that smartphones themselves, like, a lot of them, the problem is that, yes, you want the latest operating system, but a lot of what the latest operating systems do is they just add a lot of prettiness, a lot of flourish, and it's not really adding like new features, and it's using up more RAM, more onboard storage space, and so on, when there's really no reason for it to do so. In fact, speaking of Android Go, one of the most interesting things, I think, when I was researching Android Go was that it was Android Go, and it was based on Android Oreo at the time, which was the latest at the time. Okay, even though it was the Go version instead of the full-on version, that your regular Samsung Galaxy or Pixel phone was running. But there was no real noticeable difference in what the two operating systems could do. Stock Android Oreo and Go Android Oreo. I couldn't tell the difference, like any real appreciable difference between the two operating systems, but there was like a 5 gig difference in size between the two OSs. And it's like, what's happening inside of those 5 gigs? Now understand, on a smartphone, that's a lot, right? Now, I mean, on a laptop, on your average computer, I mean, a 1 terabyte hard drive or whatever the fuck's in them, that's not that big of a deal. But on a smartphone, that is any file managing app would raise a red flag if something was 5 gigs. What the fuck is that extra 5 gigs doing? Point being is that for our smartphones to work practically, there's really no need for a lot of the polish and flourish and fanciness that comes with, more of your modern operating systems. This is true with Android as much as it is with iOS, and with iPhones. So post-market OS is basically taking Linux, creating a very, very efficient Linux and app compatibility layer. That way you could take, like, say, Linux apps and port them very easily to it, and making it available on really, really antiquated hardware. Okay. It's very similar to what some Linux distributions try to do to make, laptops from say 10, 15 years ago still work and still be worthwhile to, to use today. And, people come from this from like a sustainability perspective, where they're thinking environmental, like why are we wasting all these phones or just getting thrown away, when really, if the operating systems weren't getting jammed with so much bullshit, and I would agree with them that I think operating systems largely are getting jammed with bullshit. If it's not making an operating system faster or more secure, I think it's pointless. That's my opinion on it. I recognize I might be in the minority there. But regardless, Post-Market OS is trying to do that. Faster, more secure, create a great compatibility layer for software, or an easy way to implement it into the operating system. And it works with like the Nokia N900. It works beautifully, apparently, on the Nexus 5, even though I don't think that it's not that old of a phone. But also they're rocking it on the Galaxy Nexus, which I think is one of the greatest phones ever made. I mean, that thing is just rock solid and slick. And so to have a Linux operating system, and I'm trying to think of it. Let me see if I can pull it up, because there was I think it was called Core Apps. Here it is, Core Apps, which is an entire suite of apps that are designed to work without really needing any hardware or graphical hardware acceleration, right? And really, they're just trying to make this a future-proof operating system that runs, it doesn't look ridiculous. You're not having to get into command line. I mean, you can, but you're not having to get in command line on your phone. But it's creating, this basic suite that runs very fast, very efficiently, okay, and, can work well with updates in the background and everything for smartphones. So, now, there's plenty of people who are trying to create alternative operating systems, to take away from the duopoly of iOS and Android. There's plenty of these. I do like what these guys, gals, and Z's have in mind with Post-Market OS. And, going with Linux is a great idea. Do I think this is going to necessarily go places? Maybe not. Maybe with, like the hardcore folks who, don't need to do a whole bunch of crap on their smartphone, I could see this kind of working. I'll tell you the first thing I think they need to do, get a Bitcoin wallet on there fast. And then I think you could get a very interesting certain community to build up around it. But I like it, so I'm putting it out there. I'm mentioning it. I think it's a great idea. I want this kind of thing to succeed. I don't want Android and iOS to have the duopoly that they do. I sure as fuck don't want Windows Mobile coming back, or, whatever they want to call it. but something that's really open source and could, and I do agree. Like, we have tons of these smartphones. They're just, hell, I think even I have like 4 in my drawer that I'm just not really using. I only use it for, book purposes and, and cybersecurity research. But yeah, if I had something that was constantly updated, got the latest security updates. Yeah, I'm thinking like even on my tablet, my Nexus 7, that doesn't get, really any updates anymore. And I'm running Lineage OS at that, but there's nothing more to port back to it. And so it'd be great if there's something that just ran and, it wasn't, you really have to get the financial incentive out of the operating system to allow for real future proofing and to allow for all these devices. Because what happens, for all these devices to be secure, because what happens, I know people, in fact, we might talk about this, during the climax. I see people look, I wrote the book on Android security, literally wrote the book. Okay. And you can buy it on Amazon. With new editions coming soon. But I notice, I consider it bad form to look at other people's screens. Okay. Like, I think that's, don't do that. That's tacky, and disrespectful, in my opinion. But, sometimes you can't help it, especially like if you're in a darkened room and then suddenly you see the bright white flash of Facebook or something like that. I can tell just by the top bar, notification bar, what version of Android people are running, or even what version of, like they happen to be using older iOS or whatever. I can tell. And I see people, still out there with Android 5.0 or 6.0. And all of those devices are just a botnet waiting to happen. You could argue every device is, with the right 0 day, but they're just all botnets waiting to happen. So if we could have an operating system that could be, basically updated and maintained by some kind of proverbial monastic order that cared about it, and, worked on, it didn't need the latest and greatest hardware to do what it needs to do and to function well. I'm all on board with that. Granted, once you remove the financial incentive, suddenly a lot of people aren't developing, and suddenly a lot of people aren't interested. So, it's a catch. It feels like a catch-22. And, well, there needs to be a mindset change around that, but that's besides, there you have it. But a company that actually could have a shot, I think, at really creating a third alternative is Huawei, which Huawei has been in a very ugly political and trade climate with the United States. Of course, the company's based out of China. And there was, and we've covered it briefly on past episodes of Sovereign Tech, and I've only covered it briefly because I'm really waiting to see how this all shakes out. But there was the very real chance that they weren't going to be allowed to install Android on their smartphones. And they have a very large smartphone business, especially in other parts of the world outside of the United States, like in Europe and, of course, in Asia. And so because of certain trade bans and all this other bullshit going on, they have developed what they call Harmony OS. And they recently had an event where they unveiled it. And they basically said, we can have Harmony OS on all of our phones inside of a couple days if we need to. So they're trying to call, I don't know that it's a bluff, but they're trying to call the bluff of the United States, of Google and other organizations, shall we say, that, if you tell us that we're banned, from either being in the U.S. or from using anything by a U.S. company or whatever, we are ready to roll out something completely new that will be modern and that people can jump right on. And Harmony OS does look interesting. In fact, I keep hearing the phrase that it's Fuchsia-like in its infrastructure, which Fuchsia is an open source operating system that Google has been developing for a few years now. We've certainly talked about that on Sovereign Tech in the past. And Fuchsia OS is particularly interesting because it's an RTOS. It's a real-time operating system, okay? Which means that, well, I want you to research more into RTOS. If you want to learn about real-time operating systems, basically everything's operating like it's consistently in RAM, okay? And it's an interesting, these, RTOS, there was a time where people thought it'd be the future, even for the, for the average desktop, for the average person. Fuchsia OS is certainly working in that direction. Whether or not that's going to end up being, implemented into smartphones or other devices is a whole other question entirely. But regardless, there are certainly certain businesses and fields that do use real-time operating systems. Okay. Google has clearly been looking into it for, and we've seen it running on Google hardware, like, Pixel devices. Okay. So for Huawei to want to go in that direction is very interesting. And it might be just enough of a differentiator. Because the thing with a real-time operating system is speed. It just has tremendous speed advantages. Okay. There are disadvantages that come along with that. But I wonder, also security could be advantageous with the real-time operating system and so on. I am curious how this would go. I'm guessing that that's what they mean by a Fuchsia-like infrastructure where it is it is a real-time operating system, but we'll see. I don't know if they're ever going to bother to use it. They might just be doing it saying, hey, you pull the plug on us, we're ready, and basically telling them that it's pointless for them to try, and maybe even incentivizing Google to be in Huawei's corner, because Google, as well, frankly, as Apple, probably would not want to have a third contender, especially one that has the market share of Huawei. But Harmony OS is a thing. They have apps ready for it. I'm sure that they would create kind of similar to like what Samsung was trying to do with Tizen, which that basically went fucking nowhere, but where it could run, say, Android apps, because a lot of Android apps are based on an open source infrastructure. Maybe they'd be able to pull it off. I don't know. But right now they're saying that Harmony OS is just being implemented into smart devices, not so much into smartphones, but it could be in smartphones. Being in smart devices and being a real-time operating system makes a lot more sense because there's no need for real, like, persistent storage of things like you would on a smartphone, right? Or should I say persistent access? But I imagine that they could pull it off to where they could make it, work within smartphones. And again, I think Google's looking in that direction as well. So we'll see what happens here, but very interesting as far as new operating system players in the mobile space, which consider this for a minute, folks. It might just be a matter of time because, nothing that we have had, I dare say, over the past 60, 70 years, really ever since, World War II, we've had like these successive ages. I know they say after World War II is the atomic age, right? Well, we've really had successive ages that, frankly, they don't last more than like 10 years. Where it's not constant disruption, but there's like there is no such thing as normal. There is no such thing as average. There is no such thing like the music industry. Okay. The musicianship and the way that you engaged with music and musicians, the way that you bought music, or like today, you don't buy music and you just buy streaming and a lot of these things. I mean, you think of all these institutions and where you hear a lot of people say, oh, I miss the good old days when, we used to go to the record store. Like I just recently went to a concert and I heard there was like a record store day or something. And it's like, and it's these people opining for what they thought, were the good old days of what it was like to go to the record store and to be able to experience new music and get recommendations from the cool guy or cool gal behind the counter or whatever. And it's like, how long was that a thing? Maybe 30 years, 40 years at best. I mean, and then like Camelot Music and FYE and all these conglomerates came in, quick enough and fucked it up anyway. But really, how long did that last for? In the grand scheme of human existence, just human existence, to say nothing of the fucking universe, but or even of Earth. But in the grand scheme of human existence, it's not a drop in the bucket isn't even remotely the right term. It's so infinitesimally small. And yet people treat it like, man, I fucking miss those. Those were the days. That's when shit was good. What are you talking about? You have no idea. Like, and that was good for such a short period of time. You don't know how all of this stuff is actually supposed to evolve and really engage with how, humans like to interact with other humans or with their desires. Point being is that, I think most people think, oh, if you're betting against Android and iOS, you're a fool. No, even look, Facebook, which people would say was never going to die. I would argue that Facebook is in trouble. I mean, the fact that they are dumping the newsfeed shows that Facebook has to evolve. It can't be the same thing. And for fuck's sake, if I hear people 20 years from now saying, man, I miss the good old days of Facebook. Remember the news feed in my timeline? Now all it is groups of messages. Man, I miss the good old days when you just had this flood of bullshit information and memes and pictures of cats and I don't know, whatever the hell else shows up on Facebook. I haven't been there in so long. I don't even know. But we know that they're getting away from and basically eliminating the news feed more or less. And everything's going to, groups and messaging and so on. So that's my point, is that there's no way that iOS and Android are going to be the, primary operating systems, I would dare say, over the next 10 years. I mean, they'll probably still be around, just like Windows is still around, but there's going to be something that comes out of nowhere or that comes out of, these kind of political pressures like Huawei is dealing with. I don't think it's going to be post-market OS as much as I wish it would be, but it's going to happen. Just by nature. I mean, none of this stuff really lasts. Everything you think that is all great and wonderful and normal and that this is how I should be interacting with the world, where is my newsfeed? They go away. None of this stuff lasts. It just constantly evolves. It's the nature of technology, quite frankly. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's crazy for these companies to think that they could have, I mean, it's just, you've got to be there at the right time. You got to be there with the right thing at the right time. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, that's the whole story of technology, right? The tech world, it's not cyclical. It's a spiral. Okay. Where like things have already been developed but then their time finally comes and then they become a big deal. Like microblogging or like things like Twitter. Shit like that existed 20, 25 years ago, or 30 years ago. Okay. Well before, anybody remotely involved with the creation of Twitter, BizStone, whoever, like well before they were a part of it or even thinking about it, that stuff already existed online. But the time wasn't ready, or the time wasn't right for it. The world wasn't ready for it. And you can either try and force it upon the world and maybe they'll be ready for it, or your time comes and there it is and away you go. And so maybe something like Harmony OS might take off. And maybe it just has enough of a differentiator to where, again, if it is a real-time operating system, then yeah, I would argue that it is. That's going to be a new way and I think you're going to get a lot of developers who would be excited about that. Like, holy shit, there's actually, like, there's users for this where we could collect, data from these users on how this app works within this, within this new style or not new. I mean, they've been around, but within this new type of mobile operating system. It's very fascinating. So anyway, all that said, let's talk about some, it's almost hopeful and exciting, quite frankly, but let's talk about some depressing shit, shall we? No, you know what? I mean, I'm still going to talk about depressing shit, but, why don't we get into our main story? I had another story I was going to talk about, and there's actually a book I want to read before I talk about it. But basically the Pentagon is launching balloons flying at about 65,000 feet. And they are designed with one thing in mind: spy, spy, spy. Watch everything that's going on wherever they happen to be going. And they want this to be as much as it can be, a permanent infrastructure of a surveillance network. And we're going to save that. Maybe I'll get to that in next week's episode. But there's something I want to finish up reading because I think there's another technology that's going to get implemented into these balloons. And so I think it'll create a much larger picture when we do talk about it. But that said, as talking about surveillance, why don't we get into our story of the week? And as far as surveillance goes, well, how about one of the most ubiquitous bits of software and apps that's out there? That being Microsoft's own Skype. Of course, granted, Microsoft didn't create Skype. They bought it out, 8 years ago now, I guess. But they have dramatically changed how Skype functioned. And maybe this is pointing why. So why don't we get into our main story here? So for our story of the week, coming from Vice, and here's the headline: revealed, Microsoft contractors are listening to some Skype calls. The byline is: documents, screenshots, and audio obtained by motherboard show that humans listen to Skype calls made using the app's translation function. Let's read on here. Contractors working for Microsoft are listening to personal conversations of Skype users conducted through the app's translation service, according to a cache of internal documents, screenshots, and audio recordings obtained by motherboard. Although Skype's website says that the company may analyze audio of phone calls that a user wants to translate in order to improve the chat platform services, it does not say some of this analysis will be done by humans. The Skype audio obtained by motherboard includes conversations from people talking intimately to loved ones, some chatting about personal issues such as their weight loss, and others seemingly discussing relationship problems. Other files obtained by motherboard show that Microsoft contractors are also listening to voice commands that users speak to Cortana, the company's voice assistant. Now, Stallion breaking in for a second. Cortana's more or less dead. I know it still has some use within Skype. I mean, that is a feature that they added in a while ago, but really Cortana's been getting rolled back and rolled out of so many different apps over the past couple of years. I mean, I think they're looking to phase out Cortana, and I don't know. I mean, this is me being very speculative. Okay, I'm being very clear on this, very speculative, but there's some kind of relationship between Amazon and Microsoft as far as with Alexa that I wonder about. And something that adds into that theory of mine, basically, I wouldn't be surprised if how this would happen, it'd be a hell of to get this past like the SEC or something, I don't know how they would do it. But some kind of real merger between Amazon and Microsoft, I could see happening in the next few years. And part of that I find interesting. Now, granted, Azure is a competitor to AWS, right? In fact, it's really its main competitor. But at the same time, and really understand Cortana was just at the end of the day, was really just a voice interface with Azure. That's really all that was. I mean, sure, you used it for whatever app, but all of that was even being run through Microsoft Azure, through their gigantic server farms. I find it really fascinating that Amazon has never gotten into Office Suite software. They just never really have. They tried to do some Office moves with their Fire tablets, where like they allowed you to, like they created an email app that worked with Outlook, with Outlook accounts and everything. It looked like they were trying to go in that direction, but then they seemed to kind of back off. And the dominant player, without question, and Google's trying, and they're about the only ones that could, but the dominant player, without question, as far as Office software, and Office suites go, is Microsoft. In Office 365, again, Microsoft's not really, as best I can tell, Microsoft's not making money off of Windows anymore, even though that used to be the cash cow. Microsoft makes money off of Xbox and Office 365, and I guess you could say Azure, for those that jump on that. But I wonder if the reason that Microsoft is backpedaling, in fact, they even had that, where Cortana could access Alexa and vice versa, right? I wonder if Microsoft is looking to, at some point, that there is going to be some kind of merging, because they are rocking Alexa way more. And in fact, you can download Alexa for your Windows desktop. And then, while Microsoft gets access to Alexa, perhaps Amazon creates something where they are working, where Office 365 is part of the package. Are they going to become one big company? I mean, maybe. I wonder about that. The other thing, too, is that, and we talked about this, this is maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, but Amazon was testing out their own messaging app. And I mean, also, with Alexa devices, they already have where you can do, I think you can do video calls, but certainly voice calls, because most Alexa devices, the Echoes are just speakers. It's not like the Echo Show or anything. But maybe they backed off because they were Amazon was basically looking to, work with and backdoor more or less into Skype. So just a theory that I'm putting out there, okay? But it's an interesting one. The other thing that I kind of want to mention on that with Cortana, but not just with Cortana, but this translation software. I mean, not only that, look, I know a lot of people think that, just the app does it. The software handles all the, it's algorithmic and it handles everything. Now, the dirty secret, and it ain't little, the dirty secret in Silicon Valley is that the algorithms don't work very well. And they need human curation. They need it. This stuff cannot work without it. Okay. And in fact, I would argue, like, Facebook has backed off of their own virtual assistant software. What was that? They backed off of that because to do it right requires so many people that it's not cost effective to even run a virtual assistant. Maybe Microsoft figured out the same thing. I mean, they're not even doing it internally. They're contracting out for this. But look, even if there weren't humans involved in helping with or auditing the translation process of Skype, what do you think your voice data and your video data, your video data and everything is any less or is like somehow any more secure because an algorithm's doing it instead of a human? I mean, ultimately those algorithms do pay some fealty to whoever programmed them and whoever, ultimately controls them and whoever servers they happen to be running from. In this case, Microsoft. So I get it. We're going to get into the story more, but it's somewhat of a moot point. It doesn't matter if it's humans or algorithms. The company that is running the app is going to have access to your data either way. Now you can say that this creates, and we'll talk about it. You can say that because it's it's a contractor, it's a third party, that creates a potential, that there's a security hole there, right? And where Microsoft can't be held liable or whatever. I mean, yeah, there's an argument to be made there because we've certainly seen that. I mean, a lot of like government leaks have generally come from the government working with a contractor, a third party of some kind that doesn't have the same standards that they do at their, whatever military installation or Pentagon, or NSA installation or whatever. So something to consider. Anyway, if they're not like actually bringing the people in, but even then you run into issues, right? Where, you're bringing in, well, let's just say it, Edward Snowden. Moving on. Let's keep reading with the story here. Apple and Google recently suspended their use of human transcribers for the respective Siri and Google Assistant services after a backlash over similar media reporting on the company's practices. Of course, we also know that this is true of Amazon as well. We don't know that Amazon made any changes as far as that goes. And which brings up another point. This is back in April when the whole fiasco happened with Echo. Basically that, okay, Amazon gives you the option to delete the data that your Echo collects about you. Like your voice, you can delete the voice recordings, the little snippets and all this stuff that Alexa takes of you. But what you can't delete is the transcripts of what you say to Alexa that Alexa happens to record. Sure, you can delete your voice data, but what about the transcripts? No, those are still on, all of that's still available on Amazon servers. So you didn't really, you didn't gain any privacy by deleting your voice, because that's really all you did. What you said is still being recorded by Amazon, and there are people looking at it. So every tech giant is doing this, but let's continue. Quote, the fact that I can even share some of this with you shows how lax things are in terms of protecting user data, end quote, a Microsoft contractor who provided the cache of files to Motherboard said. Motherboard granted the source anonymity to speak more candidly about internal Microsoft practices and because the person is under a non-disclosure agreement with the company. But reading on. The snippets of audio obtained by Motherboard are typically short, lasting between 5 and 10 seconds. The source said other passages can be longer, however. In 2015, Skype launched its translator service, which lets users get near real-time audio translations during phone and video calls. Before the feature's launch, Wired published an article titled, quote, How Skype Used AI to Build Its Amazing New Language Translator, end quote. The product does use artificial intelligence, and the translations are impressive in Motherboard's own tests, but like many other AI or machine learning projects, it turns out that some of the work is facilitated by humans laboring away, completing the very same tasks that the AI is supposed to do in order to improve the algorithms themselves. Again, Stallion breaking in. Even if it was AI, which that term just gets bantied about, ultimately there's still someone who has access to that. It's in no way making things more secure. But moving on. Some of the audio obtained by Motherboard is specified as coming from the translator feature of Skype's Android app, according to accompanying screenshots of the contractor screen. A fact for Skype Translator says that when people use the service, quote, Skype collects and uses your conversation to help improve Microsoft products and services to help the translation and speech recognition technology learn and grow. Sentences and automatic transcripts are analyzed, and any corrections are entered into our system to build more permanent services, end quote. Another section adds, quote, to help the technology learn and grow, we verify the automatic translations and feed any corrections back into the system to build more permanent or more performant services, end quote. The section does not say that humans may listen to audio captured by the translator feature of Skype's various apps. Microsoft's privacy policy does not make this clear either. Quote, anyway, let me read a bit of this. Quote, people use Skype to call their lovers, interview for jobs, or connect with their families abroad. Companies should be 100% transparent about the way people's conversations are recorded and how these recordings are being used, end quote. Frederick Kaltuner, data exploitation program lead at activist group Privacy International, said in an online chat. Quote, and if a sample of your voice is going to human review for whatever reason, the system should ask them whether you are okay with that, or at least give you the option to opt out. End quote, she added. Now I want to stop there again. Now, even in the Skype translator FAQ in the FAQ, it says that there could be transcriptions. The person from, all due respect to her, but the person, let's see. Yeah, all due respect to her. I think I pronounced her name wrong. But anyway, all due respect to her, Privacy International, all due respect to Privacy International. I'm sure they do great work, but they're completely ignoring that you can't delete the transcriptions. You understand? It's far worse. Reading on. Pat Walsh, an activist from Privacy Matters, said in an online chat, the marketing blurb for Skype Translator refers to the use of AI, not humans, listening in. This whole area needs a regulatory review. After reviewing this Skype translator FAQ, he added, I've looked at it and don't believe it amounts to transparent and fair processing. I'm going to stop there again. It doesn't matter if it's an AI or an algorithm doing it. Okay? If it's not, and the solution is, if it's not end-to-end encrypted, okay, and even that runs into its own problems. If you listen to last week's episode, even that runs into its own problems on a smartphone, where end-to-end encryption on a smartphone is basically bullshit. You are, whatever you say and do on, via Skype or whatever app is up for grabs by basically anybody. Because again, as is clear, the fact that this can leak shows that there's a security. That's a human, that's social engineering in a way, but that's a human security flaw in Microsoft. And oh man, I want to get into such an argument about this, because that's why they'd say you need AI and that's why you need algorithms, because humans are flawed. Humans can leak information as where algorithms and AI cannot. What a bunch of shit. Because who ultimately, again, my whole point I'm bringing up here, who ultimately programs the AI and algorithms? Human beings. Flawed human beings. I agree with you that human beings are flawed. But we're flawed in beautiful ways, I think. Fortunately, this person was flawed to come out and break his oath, whatever else, or his NDA, you name it, to say, he basically said, fuck contracts, with, whoo, I'm there, okay? And let the world know, hey, Skype translator's fucking listening to you. Good for him. Or her, or whoever she is. That's why you want humans involved. That way this shit can't be hidden. Because again, even if it's an AI and an algorithm, those things are ultimately beholden to this day to a human being. But that's what kills me. It's like you want to turn it all over to AI and algorithms when it's like, wait, they were programmed by flawed human beings. In fact, it's funny, Ellen and I, we were watching some more Star Trek, the original series the other night. We were watching The Ultimate Computer, right, with the M5 computer with Richard Daystrom. And that whole thing is like, oh no, the computer, yeah, we made it think like a human and all that, but the computer starts fucking up. And which reminds me of a classic Sovryn Tech saying that I've been saying on this show for years. To err is human. To really fuck up, you need a computer. It's hilarious. It is circular logic. You want to turn this all over to AI and algorithms because humans are flawed, but yet what programs those AI and algorithms are flawed humans. And so what are you going to end up with? Flawed AI and algorithms. Unavoidably. And algorithms that ultimately, are beholden to human beings. Some of the, they put these big quotes, in the middle of the story on this. Like here's one, about referencing what some of these transcripts and what some of this data is that's being heard by humans you didn't agree to have listened to your shit, or at least that you didn't think you were agreeing. Again, you clicked I agree or okay, and then that made everything okay, as if somehow, I don't know, text on a screen is some kind of magic fucking spell that says, we own your soul and your ass now, bend over and grab the ankles. I don't know where that came from, but regardless, here's a quote. Quote, some stuff I've heard could clearly be described as phone sex. Woo! I love phone sex. I don't know that I love somebody from Microsoft hearing it. Bunch of conservative sorry. Reading on. Here's another one. Quote, companies should be 100% transparent about the ways people's conversations are recorded and how these recordings are being used, end quote. I agree. And that includes being very open about the fact that while we give you the ability to delete your vocal data, your voice data, we keep transcripts. Be nice if a company came out and mentioned that. So reading on a little bit more here, a Microsoft spokesperson told Motherboard in an emailed statement, quote, Microsoft collects voice data to provide and improve voice-enabled services like search, voice commands, dictation, or translation services. We strive to be transparent about our collection and use of voice data to ensure customers can make informed choices about when and how their voice data is used. Microsoft gets customers' permission before collecting and using their voice data, end quote. And what a joke. What a joke. You're telling me, I remember there was a conference where Steve Jobs was talking, and he says, you need to make privacy, you need to put it in plain English and write in people's faces saying, this is what's going to happen to your data if you do such and such. What is this? What is Microsoft's customer permission? Are they putting up a big screen on your screen, or a big window that says a big message that comes up and says, hey, we're going to be other human beings are going to listen to this. We're going to do all kinds of crazy shit with this data, blah, blah, and just put it in plain English. You want people to agree to all the legal mumbo jumbo after the fact? fine, whatever. I mean, I think that's crap too, but I get it. But instead, no, you couch all of this in, like I just said, legal mumbo jumbo in these EULAs that, a person just wants to get talking on the phone, I guess, or talking via Skype. They'd be there for the next 2, 3, 4 hours at best, reading, the terms of service or the EULA or whatever. It's so insulting. They insult us every time that they claim that, well, we did ask. Yeah, okay. Who'd you ask? A team of lawyers? That's what you'd have to be to understand what the fuck you're reading. Reading on. This is also more from Microsoft. We also put in place several procedures designed to prioritize users' privacy before sharing this data with our vendors, including de-identifying data, requiring non-disclosure agreements with vendors and their employees, and requiring that vendors meet the high privacy standards set out in European law. We continue to review the way we handle voice data to ensure we make options as clear as possible to customers and provide strong privacy protections, end quote, the statement added. This is so hilarious from a company that argued for their own privacy. And yeah, granted also their users after a fact, but their own privacy when they were taking on the DOJ, when the US DOJ was trying to go after, a mail server in Ireland. Saying, you can't just open this stuff up, we have the rights to this and all that, but I guess Skype translator users do not. Reading on, Microsoft said both its Skype translator FAQ and documentation on Cortana are clear in that the company uses voice data to improve their services. Again, they do not say a human may listen to the voice data, however. The story goes on, but I think you get the point. I think you get the picture here, okay? This is, they can couch it and say it however they want, okay? It ultimately, even if it said that humans were listening, even if it doesn't say humans are listening, be an educated consumer, be an educated user, and understand that humans are always listening. Unless it's something that you just locally install, there's no server action going, whatsoever, okay, or it's end-to-end encrypted, not on a smartphone, okay, there is no real expectation of privacy. There just isn't. And this is the funny thing. So originally, Skype, which has been around for a much longer time than Microsoft has been its stead, originally Skype was peer-to-peer. In fact, even when Microsoft first bought it for the first couple of years, I think it was, first 2, 3, 4 years, they maintained it as a peer-to-peer system, meaning that it didn't need to go over, necessarily, like, it wasn't operating off of Microsoft servers. Okay. Now, around 2013, 2014, I think it was. In fact, I brought it up many times. I'm like, what is going on with Skype? Because it is just failing and disconnecting right and left. It was really bad. Everybody was complaining about it. It was the biggest joke. It was one of the biggest jokes on the internet. It's like, wow, can you even rely on Skype for anything? And then, come 2014, I want to say it was. Maybe it was even 2015, but certainly, but around there. Then Microsoft finally came out and admitted exactly what was going on. They said, we have been moving Skype over to a cloud environment. It was no longer peer-to-peer. And I get it. I understand why they were doing that. Or, I understand some of why they were doing that. Some of the more, shall we say, benign, perhaps, reasons, like to be able to implement a Skype translator, which basically, runs off of some human interaction, some human input. Okay. And from some third party, not even Microsoft itself, and running off of Microsoft Azure, of course. Skype, moving away from peer-to-peer, basically ensured that you were never going to have a private conversation of any kind on Skype. I'm not saying it was even private before. In fact, Skype was, in the cypherpunk community, even throughout the aughts, Skype was considered. There's some credit to give to Skype for how it fucked with the phone monopolies, okay, like the telco monopolies. But at the same time, Skype was widely considered spyware, well before Microsoft bought it. So it's not like you could even really trust it then, but now you could just trust it even less. And this collection of all of this data, I agree. I think a lot of it is used to, quote unquote, improve the service and perhaps to, quote unquote, improve, their various algorithms, AI, whatever, buzzword that they want to use for, machine learning. I guess that one's fallen out of vogue now. That it is meant to improve that. But then that same AI, machine learning, algorithm, blah, blah, isn't just meant for Skype Translator. It has some kind of larger purpose. And what that larger purpose is, it's kind of anyone's guess, but I would be very concerned, as many Microsoft employees are, not just the Golden Stallion, not just activists, anarchists, and whoever else out there, but as many Microsoft employees are of how Microsoft works with ICE, various police departments, right? I mean, they're basically, Microsoft, I mean, they work on, what do you call it there? They literally work on like predictive crime. Like they have systems set up for that. The whole wisdom of the crowds kind of nonsense, right? And that is nonsense. Talked about that many times on the show. How wisdom of the crowds and any like programming around that or, predictive or predictions around that, like just don't work and fail compared to the individual. But regardless, I mean, and also Microsoft, without question, works with the military. I can say that from personal experience. You think all that, ability to surveil and track, we didn't get into it with the balloons earlier that the Pentagon's launching, it's Southcom that's putting them out there. We didn't even get into that. But is the same stuff, all this data that you're feeding into because you think you're just having this great conversation via Skype Translator, via Skype, that ultimately can and will be used against you. And who knows for what. I'm putting it out there. I think that that's the absolute reality of the situation is that, all of this data getting collected is ultimately going to service something else. I mean, Skype Translator, like when it first came out, brilliant idea. I mean, that was the Star Trek future. The Universal Translator is here. I understand the excitement around it and all that. But for it to really work and to eventually become something that's just like an afterthought that people get used to, yeah, this has to happen. You have to collect a shit ton of data about people and you have to keep it because you have to keep feeding it in to your algorithms. So that's a problem. It's a very real problem. But I mean, these concerns that, it's almost like Motherboard is basically saying, or a lot of these privacy advocates, it's almost like they're basically saying, well, if Microsoft just told us that humans were listening, okay, fine. Then we know and we could choose whether or not to use it. But I'm telling you, the man of tomorrow is telling you, no, it doesn't matter if it's, what is listening and what's processing the information. Ultimately, there are people who you probably don't want listening to what you're doing. Ultimately. So it's kind of a moot point. Anyway, putting that out there, that it is collecting all of that, and don't think that, again, Amazon's not doing the same. I guarantee you, Google and Apple can say that they stopped. Horseshit. You know as well as I do that they didn't stop. And again, there's no mention, and this whole article just completely ignores the problem of transcripts. Great, they don't have your voice saying it. Well, they have the words that you said regardless, typed out in text. What are you going to do then? You're listening to Sovryn Tech, and I'll be right back with more. Woo! Hey, if you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. Blocktap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed, so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. Blocktap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Again, that's blocktap.io, blocktap.io, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
Woo, it is time for HackSec, where we talk issues of hacking and security, though really we'd kind of been talking about that this whole show, and certainly when it comes to Skype. But maybe you're somebody, a little bit of an exhibitionist perhaps, and you want everybody to hear what you're saying. Here's a better way to go about it. don't use Skype. Actually, you can use Skype to call into the show, if I remember correctly. But why don't you call in to the number 27 talk show in the United States? That being Sovryn Tech sponsor, Free Talk Live. Why don't you go to freetalklive.com? We are talking about a radio show, runs 3 hours a night, 7 nights a week, 365 days a year. It is insane. I love doing audio, but I am in awe every time I consider those numbers. And the fact that Free Talk Live has been going on for, they got to be going on almost 20 years now. I feel like, it seems like it's been going on forever. Well over 10, I know that. I miss my days. I was a co-host for 2 years, and man, those are some good times. But anyway, you can call in, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Maybe you want to tell people about how, guess what, Skype's listening to you. But at least on Free Talk Live, you're going to reach out to people that might want to actually hear you want to hear your voice, as to where if you're using Skype and just Skype between other people are hearing your conversation that you don't want them to hear. But, people that you don't want hearing it. So, but go to freetalklive.com. You can really get your voice out there in a meaningful way. And anyway, I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. freetalklive.com, number 27. In fact, that number, I bet that it goes up like every year. It's got to be even higher. I mean, unbelievable. I'm so proud of that. Proud of that show and, what they achieve. So anyway, okay, freetalklive.com. Check it out. Thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. In fact, let them know that the Golden Stallion sent you. They're going to know who you're talking about. They love me. So anyway, well, while we're talking hacking and security here, in fact, this is actually a great story to bring up. And we might have time to get into the climax a little bit, but this is a great story to bring up after what we were just discussing with Skype. And it might seem a little bit obvious, but I don't think people think about this enough. And ironically, this is very meta because really this story is about thinking about it. This is from Business Insider, not always the best news source, but whatever. It's from Business Insider. A professional hacker reveals the top security mistake people make online. And it's something you probably do every day. This story is from August 2nd, 2019, by Lisa A. DeChico. I think I got that right. Anyway, you may be great at coming up with complex passwords that are hard to guess, keeping your smartphone or computer software up to date, and avoiding phishing schemes. But there's another critical security mistake people often make online: oversharing on social media. That's, in fact, one could argue, I could argue, Skype is in its own way social media. In fact, I think it seems pretty clear Microsoft has been trying for a little while to get Skype to become more of a social media platform where they're trying to turn it into Snapchat, right? We've been seeing that for a while. I do want to bring up also that, yes, Skype has implemented where you can use the Signal protocol for, just sending basic text chats. This is true, and it is end-to-end encrypted, and it's available on desktop. It's available on, on smartphones as well. As many have questioned in the past, including with WhatsApp's implementation of the Signal protocol, it's a debate whether or not, or it's a question as to how perfect that implementation is. Is there some kind of backdoor? Like, could the Skype app be keeping a transcription of everything you type out? Because if it's just keeping what you type out, be it on desktop or on a smartphone, all the encryption in the world doesn't fucking matter then, right? That's great that it's not going to end up on Skype's servers as you click send, perhaps, and, it'll just show up as gibberish, encrypted using the Signal protocol. But then you still run into the problem is the keyboard, actually just logging everything that you type out. I would say probably so, but, just guessing. We aren't talking about a company here that has humans just listen to whatever the fuck you're saying at any given moment. But anyway, on Skype. Reading on. So, social media, Skype, same thing. That's according to Itay Moore, an executive security advisor at IBM Security. So I would argue he's probably the real deal. IBM's really no joke. It's not just sensitive personal data like phone numbers, credit card numbers, and addresses that you should avoid sharing online, but also seemingly harmless information like your mother's maiden name or your pet's name. Such details are often used as answers to two-step verification questions or passwords, and they can easily be found just by scanning someone's Facebook page if that person frequently shares photos of their pets, for example. Quote, "Today, people are writing about everything," end quote, said Moore, who studies cybercriminal tactics on the dark web to help clients better protect themselves by understanding how hackers work. Quote, "They're putting everything online, and then they get mad if you don't read it." And that's such a great point to bring up, right? Is that You really shouldn't want people to know this stuff about you. But then if they do, and if they don't want to know, then you get all mad and think the world doesn't care about you or something like this. If they really cared about you, what they do is they'd say something like, well, that's really nice, but you should be very careful about sharing that kind of information online. I mean, let's be clear about this. Like even with what we were talking about earlier in the show, the Google Advanced Protection Program. While that does it right in that no matter what knowledge somebody has about you, if they don't have your security key, if they don't have your physical YubiKey in their hand, plugged into a USB port or connected to NFC or Bluetooth, whatever, if they don't have that, it doesn't matter what they know about you. They're fucked. That's the right way to do it. But here's the rub. Even with that, now I don't know what the process looks like. I haven't seen anybody go through it, nor have I seen anybody write about it. If you lose your YubiKey with the Google Advanced Protection Program, then you have to go through a battery of, I guess, questions and tests and upload your license and whatever. Who knows? But they probably would, and fuck, if anybody know, it would be Google. They'd probably ask you, what's your pet's name? What's your this? I didn't have to set any of that up to do any kind of verification for the Google Advanced Protection Program when I set it up. But I bet there's some kind of security questions along those lines that the more information that you still put out there might get somebody past, Google's whatever lengths they're willing to go to prove that you are you, might get somebody past that, even if you're in the Google Advanced Protection Program. So never think that anything's foolproof. Even a YubiKey or whatever 2FA you're thinking of, okay? You just don't do it. Don't share as little information as possible. Let's read on. In addition to being careful about what you share on social media, it's also a good idea to do some critical thinking when it comes to the companies and organizations asking for your personal information, Moore said. He shared an example of when he filled out a new patient form at a doctor's office that asked for his social security number. He didn't write it, and that decision had no effect on his visit, he said. Quote, so why did you ask me for that in the first place? If you got breached and then the information is there, I'm going to have a whole other set of problems, end quote. Being selective about the information you share online is even more important as data breaches become increasingly common. Just earlier this week, Capital One said it had been hit with a massive data breach that affected 100 million people in the United States and 6 million in Canada. Compromised information included names, addresses, date of birth, phone numbers, social security numbers of 140,000 credit card customers, and the bank account numbers of 80,000 customers. Scrutinizing why a company needs your information in the first place is especially critical when it comes to app permissions. Companies like Apple and Google are trying to make it easier to manage which apps have access to different parts of your phone. But it's up to the person to use those tools and keep track of what apps are actually accessing. Quote, we don't look at it anymore. We just click next. Moore said, quote, so we need to pay attention to these things. And that's kind of what I was mentioning earlier. But to have empathy for the everyday user of, like, say, Skype or whatever app, who has the time? And why would you want to go through the horrible process of, like, reading all that fucking legalese in terms of service or a EULA? Now, one of the dangers of so many things, the hacker here, Moore, he brings up the example of when he was filling out an application at the doctor's office. Now, I like applying this lack of sharing of information in MeetSpace as well. I think that is right fucking on. Like, yes, treat MeetSpace the same you do as digital space, vice versa. Okay, I'm totally on board with that. Here's the rub, is that while you can get away with that sort of thing in person, right, and not fill out, say, when you go to the doctor's office and not put that information down on your, whatever you have to fill out, whatever form they give you, and you have to fill that out. Online, usually you can't even click next if you don't fill in all of the required fields, and you don't get to argue with anybody about it, about the required fields. This is one of the dangers of putting so many services and so many things online, is because, like, I agree with what Moore is saying here, and I think you should. And look, if you're at the doctor's office, you walk up there and they say, could you please put in your social security number? And you said to them, could you explain, and you ask them, could you explain to me why you want that information? And if they don't give you a good reason, you just say, no, I'm not going to do it. And most people are scared to do that sort of thing, especially at a place like a doctor's office where the doctor is seen as an authority, usually a kindly one, but an authority nonetheless. And there's been plenty of research and studies done, an experiment's done on where, if guys, if the person has the lab coat on or, the white coat or whatever, they'll believe, the everyday person will believe anything that person with the white coat says. Even if it's like a prankster, or they're telling you complete gibberish and bullshit. I mean, that's a real problem in itself. But most people, here's an example, okay, speaking of kind of doctor's offices. So I buy my glasses from a place called Zenni, okay, and I'm sure many of you do as well because I've mentioned it many times over the years of the show. The show's been going on 7 years. We're going to be going on 8 here very soon. And to order off of Zenni's, you need all of your, information, about your eyes. Go to your prescription information, basically. Now, you can get all of that off of your last time you visited the eye doctor, in the paper that they gave you as you left. The one thing you can't get is pupillary distance. You have to call the eye doctor that you last saw for that. Okay? And here's the funny thing is that when you call them, or you can go walk into the office, they give you a hard time when you ask for that. Why? Because they know what you're doing. They know you're buying less expensive, dare I say significantly less expensive, but equal quality, or perhaps equal quality, glasses online and not from the eye doctor's office. Okay, which is usually attached, obviously, to some kind of eyeglass store. They know what you're doing, and so they don't want to give you that information, which is interesting because, I'm kind of telling you to just not hand over information to people, right? But you have the right to your own information about yourself. If there are rights, if you want to argue that, you could say that. Okay. But the point is that they know what you're doing and, they will give you a hard time. And that's the thing is that in a lot of these instances where you don't say it's the opposite spectrum of it, where you don't want to share information, an office might give you, or whatever organization, they may give you a hard time. I want you to raise a stink about it. And the more of us that do that get these, hell, the doctor's office, whatever organization, whatever business, the more of us that raise a stink about it saying, no, I'm not going to give you that information unless you give me a very, very goddamn good reason why you want it or why you need it in the first place. And they really need to prove it. Then, the more normalized this lack of sharing of information can become. But, that's just one aspect of this. The other aspect of it is still right on, that Moore from IBM brings up here. And that is even talking about your pets online, talking about all these other things, all that information that you're just constantly sharing on social media, about what you did during your day, what your favorite color is, and, all this other crap. It's just a honeypot waiting for somebody to engage in identity theft, credit card theft, go down the list. It's just waiting for it. And we don't think about it because so many of these, the tech giants like Facebook or Twitter or whoever, they try to make it fun and engaging for you to share as much information as they can pull out of you because they want it for, their own reasons that may not have to do with identity theft, but they certainly have to do with theft of your soul. Well, you know what I mean. We don't think about this, and I want you to start thinking twice. Look at the fields that you're filling out in MeetSpace and online, and if you can get away with not putting in information, do so. If there is an alternative, a lot of websites, they have contact forms that have required fields of information. Underneath those contact forms, often they will have just an email address where you could just email them instead, and you could use that email. Yeah, it takes an extra step, but that's the nature of security, folks. You always have the balance, right? There's the balance between convenience and security, and we want security on this show. You could use that email address to send less information to them, okay, as compared to what the contact form may require. So that's something to look out for as well to really resolve this. I want you doing this across the fucking internet, you understand? Not just on social media. Understand everything you are typing out eventually can and will be used against you, unless it's something in a paper journal. And I think paper journals are wonderful. You know why? And I can't really prove this, but I'm going to say it. I think that if whatever authorities in whatever part of the world you happen to be, if they come storming your apartment or something like that, I bet they ignore paper books. They're just running for the computers and the smartphones and the laptops. Paper books have become their own form of encryption. Paper journals have become their own form of encryption. Just in their, dare I say, monotony, in their unassuming look, in their, well, those don't mean anything in the world today, attitude that they have, or stigma, I should say, that they have around them. I'm not saying that that's proof that that's going to work all the time, but I wonder about that. Just something to consider. But yeah, let's get used to sharing less and less information. And I get it. On social media by its very nature wants you to it gives you this attitude. It compels you to think that you're some kind of celebrity. Without getting into an abstract conversation around celebritydom, okay, unless you are some kind of celebrity and there is some purpose behind what you're doing. I mean, look, folks, like me, do I talk about what I'm up to and so on? I actually, believe it or not, I do delay often what I talk about and when I've done things. I mean, there's a lot of ways in which I obfuscate what I really do. But regardless, I mean, I am a professional podcaster. Professional as in I have sponsors. I make money off of doing this. This content gets used in very interesting spaces. I am literally a professional. As far as celebrity goes, I'm maybe like an X or Y class celebrity. Not exactly a Z. I'm not a blogger, but I'm little above that. And so that's not saying that I get to, that I just have, carte blanche to say whatever I want to say. Oh, no. Didn't I tell you at the beginning of the episode I'm using tails? Why am I using tails? Because I'm looking to obfuscate a whole shit ton of information about what the fuck I'm doing. You should too. Think twice about everything. Unless you're, writing the next great novel, and Satan bless you if you are. I want you to think twice every time you're typing something onto a keyboard, an on-screen keyboard or a physical keyboard on your laptop. Think twice. All right? So anyway, I'll be right back with the climax. I got a little something I want to bring up. I'll just be quick about it. And we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! In 2014, he ran from Miami to San Francisco, raising awareness for Bitcoin and the homeless epidemic in America, and now he's doing it again. Blockchain evangelist and advocate for homeless rights Jason King is running across North America right now, from Miami to Santa Monica, right now. 5 years later, his commitment to promoting blockchain technology and fighting the homeless epidemic in America is stronger than ever. And you can help Jason now by going to blockchainacrossamerica.com. While you're there, donate to Satoshi Forest Sanctuary Incorporated to help the homeless, along with all kinds of other ways you can help. Get involved today. blockchainacrossamerica.com. That's blockchainacrossamerica.com.
The climax.
Talk about sharing information. A little oversharing, maybe, but God damn it, am I so proud of it, so I'm going to share it with you. I was just locking lips with the most amazing, brilliant, beautiful woman on the planet. Right during that break, baby. And who was that the time? I'm about to break out some Blue Chew here in a minute. Anyway, and put up the Do Not Disturb sign. Speaking of Do Not Disturb, actually. So, of course, and the woman that I was just kissing. No, not Lizzie Hale. Ellen and I, we went and saw recently, we went and caught, boy, this was a hell of a double billing. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. And I think we'll have a full review coming on in an upcoming episode of the Hard and Fast podcast. But we went and saw Hailstorm. It was a co-headliner. Okay. So, I mean, Hailstorm ended up opening, but they weren't really opening. Again, they're a co-headliner. The opening act was Motionless in White. I'm not the biggest fan. Whatever. That's fine. But anyway, it was Hailstorm and Alice Cooper. Fuck. Can you believe that? Talk about a dark show. Hailstorm has all the dark sexiness and everything. And Alice Cooper has kind of a dark sexiness in his own way, but he has all, he's the Prince of Darkness, right? But anyway, I'll say it here. Phenomenal fucking concert. I mean, just absolutely phenomenal. But anyway, and I don't know what this is. I have this, and it has there's a tech angle and a reality angle here with what I'm about to share with you. Because it was something that happened at the concert, okay? Nothing to do with the acts involved. I don't know what this is. It feels like every time I go to a concert, or Ellen and I are going to a concert, whatever, there's always an idiot nearby. And it doesn't matter if I've gotten third row tickets or if it's 20th row tickets. It just doesn't matter. Somehow we end up like next to like one or two idiots, like every single time. It's the weird, like at some point, I'll tell you the stories, like at a Dream Theater concert, there was just, and you wouldn't think that there could possibly be morons at a Dream Theater concert. We are talking about arguably the most intellectual band that has ever graced this earth. But there can be. There really can be. I know. We'll save that story for another time. Even Whitesnake. Fuck. It was, I don't know what that was. Anyway. This person wasn't actually being an idiot at this concert. Okay? Now, I know the old KSR saying was out of Antarctica. I think it was his book, Antarctica, where he says, you can't get more than 5 people together and not have one idiot in the crowd. And it's so true. That's why your Dunbar number should stay under 5. But anyway, there's this guy right in front of us. Tattooed head, the whole thing, whatever. Anyway, whatever. I'm not saying that has any bearing on his intellect. But he had a Android smartphone. It was one of those cases, kind of like I was mentioning earlier, where, when the bright white of Facebook, and in this case it was actually Facebook Messenger, it's just unavoidable. Like when you're in a darkened hall, as it were, seeing a concert, when suddenly the fucker couldn't even dim the screen. But when this bright white shows up, and I know Facebook's finally coming out of the fucking dark mode, and I know Messenger's had dark mode for a few months now. You can't help but, like, your eyes just go boom, it's like a flashing strobe light, and you just can't help but look. And this guy was sitting back in his chair. Never raised the horns, as you should at a metal show, goddammit. He was sitting back in his chair, and he had his smartphone up. Not, because we were a good distance back from the stage. Not taking pictures of the action that was happening on the stage. I tweeted about this, by the way. You can go to @SovrynTech and you can see it. But he was taking pictures of what the camera that was displaying action on the Jumbotron. He was taking pictures of what was happening on the Jumbotron. And it wasn't like some kind of crazy graphics, like when you go to a Kiss show or something, like there's lots of like LED screens and they're showing, like they have the Kiss symbol in the back and they're showing all this, like during Psycho Circus, you're seeing all this stuff happen on the screen that couldn't possibly happen in real life, right? Or at least at this point in time. No, it was just a cameraman having close-ups of what was happening on the stage. But this guy, he had to have taken hundreds of pictures during this entire concert. I can't even remember. He kept like locking and unlocking his phone like every couple minutes, taking another picture. But effectively, he was watching the entire fucking concert through his smartphone screen, taking pictures, video, whatever else, and sharing it with someone. I hate, talk about oversharing. I know the guy's name. I didn't want to know the guy's name. I couldn't help but know his name. It's fucking blazing across, because it's at the top of his Facebook thing, and you could see his goddamn ugly mug on, sorry. You could see his face in his profile picture, which tried to look like a much more professional version of the person that was there. So bad. You people. Anyway, he's basically watching this concert. Amazing concert, too. And look, what was happening on the Jumbotron could not possibly capture the essence of, like, because Alice Cooper had this full castle, like this castle of doom, he called it at the beginning. And Hailstorm had an awesome light show that they had going on. The Jumbotron literally could not. It was impossible for it to capture everything that was happening on that stage. And you couldn't follow everybody involved. You had to be watching it. And I mean, no matter what seat you had. And look, phones have zooms, you know, digital zoom, even optical zoom, where you can get, even if you're in row 20, where you can get pretty goddamn close to what's happening on, you know, on the stage, and you're going to get a great picture. There's no need to be taking pictures of what the fuck is happening on the Jumbotron. In fact, you're missing 80% of what's happening on stage, and there's a lot happening that you'd love to capture in a picture. At least I think you would. But this guy, and it struck me, I was getting incredibly frustrated because, again, his, you know, Facebook Messenger keeps popping up and there's, boom, suddenly this bright white, you know, light in my face, and it's so fucking bad. This guy, I mean, to say nothing, you know, if I weren't such a nice guy, a little pun intended there for Alice Cooper, if you know what I mean. If I weren't such a nice guy, just what I saw from him holding up his screen for 2 hours, I could own his ass digitally. You understand? I mean, I saw everything. I saw his unlock code. I mean, and I couldn't help it. I didn't want to see it. I saw his name. I saw who he talked to. I mean, like, I know their names. And I don't give a fucking rat's ass about this person, you understand? I am there. The only person I care about is Ellen. I mean, that's, well, anyway. I mean, you know, and I want to see, you know, Lizzie Hale doing her sexy thing. And I want to see Alice Cooper, you know, getting his head chopped off, the whole business. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see Facebook. I don't want to see Facebook Messenger. I don't want to see your unlock codes. I don't want to know anything about your phone. I don't want to see your phones. This is a problem that a lot of people have brought up. In fact, recently there was a concert where Rob Halford, Judas Priest, like kicked a phone out of a guy's hand. He's like, watch the guy, and I think he even yelled out, watch the goddamn show. I mean, this problem with pictures, this isn't even the point I'm getting to. I'm going to get to my point. The problem with like this constantly taking pictures things. I mean, and this guy, the fucker in front of me, he was even using flash on some of those pictures. Look, I know a thing or two about being on stage. And flash photography, when they tell you don't use flash photography, you know, when they used to say that years ago, there was a reason they were telling you that, because you blind the fucking performer. I've had it happen to me. I mean, it's rude. It's downright rude. I mean, and well, that did speak to his intellect. But regardless of that, okay, this obsession with cameras. We were talking earlier about Samsung having a 108 megapixel camera because holy fuck, we got to take all those pictures. I want you to try this. I want the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, wants you to try appreciating the moment and collecting the memory in your own head and being present where you are. And not worried about, not even having it as an afterthought of, you know, fuck, is this picture that I'm about to take going to turn out all right? Fuck the pictures. Enjoy the moment. Mind-boggling to me how people have come. And look, this isn't like a thing because of smartphones. I've felt this way back before cell phones with cameras were even a thing. How about you be present and enjoy the moment? I mean, fuck, I have so many things in my spank bank. I'm sorry. I mean, in my brain that I've done where I just enjoyed the moment. Okay. I don't need pictures. If you have an imagination, if you have any kind of memory capacity, which I know our attention and ability to remember is getting consistently degraded by the very devices that we use to supposedly preserve it. Supposedly. Just wait until you try to cross some border and they take your phone away, though. And then where'd those pictures go? Or, anyway. Or you put it on a cloud service. But guess what? The guy behind you at the fucking concert just saw your password and everything, where you store all your pictures, and he just went there and he deleted all of them, motherfucker. Way to go. Now, to my real point of telling this story. The fact, and he wasn't the only one. This guy wasn't the only one. The fact that he was sitting there at this tremendous concert, and it was entertaining as fuck. Lots to see on stage. Was watching it through a 5.5-inch screen the entire time, but not only that. He wasn't just watching it through a 5.5-inch screen. He was actually watching another screen, that being the Jumbotron. Thankfully, that's much larger, but he's watching it through a Jumbotron. He was watching it, so he's like watching it through two screens. Like talk about meta. You're watching a screen through a screen. You're even preserving pictures of a screen via a screen that you're going to watch the shit on the screen. Screens. I just want to yell out screens. And you never look at what's actually happening in real life. And I saw this, watching through a screen, watching a screen through a screen, and not looking at the amazing and beautiful thing happening right in front of you. It was the most incredible commentary and analogy, I think, for the world we live in today that I've ever experienced. It was just this is so simulation and simulacra, right? That book. I love that book. I think it's very important. It's what the Matrix is based on. It's that in a microcosm. Because I feel like that's what most of us are doing. We are experiencing reality A through the perspective that someone else wants, which is represented in this analogy by what the camera was showing on the Jumbotron by some professional cameraman. Or, and that could just as easily, the Jumbotron could represent Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And then you're looking at it through, that skewed version of reality, which it ultimately is. And you're looking at that through your little phone screen. And you're never you're never seeing, it's forest for the trees. You're never seeing the forest. This is what we've come to. I'm telling you, this guy, and again, he was not the only one. You could see the sea of screens, and those hands never went down. I mean, I'm glad that people are going to have tremendous, forearm strength going into the future, at least for one of their arms. But for fuck's sake, they're going to have no vision. They're going to have no perception, real perception, innate perception of reality. Everything's a screen through a screen through a screen. Everything's filtered. And you're never seeing what's really going on. Now, I'm not saying reality's holographic, getting into that kind of bullshit, because that's bullshit. Reality's reality. It's objective. It's here. It's real. But your perception and how you interact with it is reliant upon you using all of your senses. Your senses! Not your smartphone camera or the Jumbotron. But I think that's what most of us has come to. Our reality has become screens. What is it? We see, I'm trying to think of like the Paul. I mean, I'm an atheist, folks, but like, what did Paul say? Like through a glass darkly or something like that, whatever the quote was. I mean, like, that's what we've come to. We don't even look at things with our own eyes anymore, with our own senses. It's so fucking bad. And we're so reliant upon these little 5-inch black mirrors in front of us. And that's how we interact with the world. And if we don't use and we even use that just to look at a whole other, filtered and curated version of what we're supposed to be, or, of what's there, again, represented by the Jumbotron, we never see the reality. We never see what's really there. And that's really fucking sad. I thought that, I walked away from that show excited, invigorated. It was an amazing concert, but at the same time, incredibly depressed that so many people there didn't really take in the amazing presentation, frankly, that these tremendous artists, and Hailstorm and Alice Cooper certainly are, had in store for them. What a pity. How disrespectful to the artist, in my opinion. But then how disrespectful to yourself to not allow yourself to breathe in and take in everything going on around you. And a part of me wonders if the reason people do this sort of thing is because they're just afraid if they actually ever saw the full picture, not seeing the screen through a screen, but saw the whole thing, that they couldn't handle it. I know that's a lot of metaphor, a lot of stuff to take away from a simple heavy metal concert. But it's getting that bad to where it's so easily recognizable, even at something that would seem to be so benign and so simple. So, man, I think a part of me just like wants to, print out like business cards for Sovryn Tech and just like lace them and drop them all over the place at like these venues. Wherever I see a bunch of people just like, looking at reality through a shit ton of smartphones. And I don't know, maybe their smartphone camera will take the picture of that and they'll see something. Maybe I'll put a QR code on it. I've done that in the past and it'll take them to the site. Do you want to go to the site? Holy shit, what is this? Yeah, sure. What did this picture do? Oh, holy shit. And maybe then they can hear this and they can just, like we were just talking about with how much information you share, and they can say, they can think twice about what they're doing, and they're not just taking pictures or talking willy-nilly or typing willy-nilly to servers that are completely impersonal and are just waiting to, be taken advantage of by bad actors, and, your ass gets owned. I mean, and think about that too. I mean, that was so bad. Like, I really could have had this guy, if I went by what Alice Cooper was singing, and he sang it, "No More Mr. Nice Guy." If I wasn't a nice guy, oh man, I would have taken all these people, just by looking at their screens at a concert. And you don't even, and how many of you ever even thought about that? I mean, your Sovryn Tech listeners, you are easily, all of you, a cut above the intellect and awareness of the everyday person. You're more than a cut above. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you'd know better. But if you didn't think about it, just in case, I'm bringing it to you here. So I think that puts a nice theme throughout this entire episode. And so I'm going to wrap it up with that. Anyway, you be careful at those concerts. You be careful on social media. And if you knew what's best for you, you just get fucking off of it. So anyway. And be careful with that damn smartphone. Those black mirrors, dangerous. Think twice. All right, that's it. We'll wrap it up. I will see all of you. Of course, if you want to hear more of this kind of content or you want to ask me questions, we do a Q&A every Wednesday. It's a great time. And there's all other kinds of episodes, thousands of hours of content to get access to, exclusive access. And you just become a member of the Zomia One Underground. Go to Zomia1.com, get your hookup. And we talk Sovryn Tech there. We talk all the shows that exist on Zomia One. It's such a great time. Zomia1.com, just look on the left-hand side and you'll find where you can sign up and do it. So that'll be it for this week's Sovryn Tech. I will see all of you on the other side. I need a better woo on the other side. How about that one? There you go. All right, go. Put your smartphone down, for fuck's sake. Turn it off. Turn me off. No, turn me on. Wait, all right, no, I'm gone. That's it. See you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.